Hey, what's going on, guys? It's me, Train Man, and welcome back to the Zombie Train. I know I didn't miss an episode in there, but, I missed an episode of the last series and an episode the day before it as well. So, I kind of feel like it's been a while even though it hasn't. Speaking of a while, it took a while to get things running today. You may notice that the first autosave in this video takes longer than usual. I didn't keep track of the second ones, but I thought I had lost the route for good. I booted up trains, and it was faulty, and I didn't know what to do, so I booted down trains, shut down trains, started it up again. Content Manager got me stuck on a thing that said, applying filter, please wait. I realized, kind of right away that it would never actually apply the filter, so ended up going through, looking it up, found the problem, found somebody else who had the problem, found somebody else who had a solution, deleted a bunch of files, and Trains rebuilt them. It let me do the video. I tried to go back into it. Same thing happened. So went through, deleted those files again, and now it's doing an asset database. So maybe that'll fix things. If not, I was going to do database repairs, etc. But really, I'm just going to go back and download a bunch of content that I was missing. So anyways, this week, I'll be honest, I don't know what to talk about. Oh, real quick, what we did this week, I finished up this area. I'm going to have Jader work on this area, turn it all into farms. After, this bit right here is hill, but the rest of the area from here to Wyvern is all farms. So, that needs to be done, and then I will have, the map will have scenery all the way through, pretty much, from one end to the other. And that's good. There's a little bit that needs to be redone, and by a little bit I mean a section leading up at the summit, but that isn't going to be redone by the time we actually do an episode there, so maybe we're stuck with it, I don't know. Anyways, I might just do that anyways and go, that's not where that was, but I don't like to do that sort of hand-wavy stuff. Anyways, so to get onto the Zombie Train stuff, I don't really know what I can talk about. I don't know what's sort of viable. I've covered a hell of a lot of stuff. Of course, there is a lot of stuff that happened. Like an unbelievable amount of stuff that happened in the span of how many years? There was how many years was it down the line that the Zombie Train Incorporated was created? It must have been 3 or 4. Yeah, it must have been 4, I think. And then moving on from there, there were, another solid few years where the Zombie Train Incorporated was still working up to steam, no pun intended. And then another solid few years where we got the diesels in. And the reason we didn't go with diesels right away, even though we had loads of them and they would have been easier to run, is we didn't have the fuel. And now I'm sure you're saying, I'm sure any of you who actually understand the creation of refined fuels, etc., realize that a refinery is just sort of like a giant still, and you're letting the stuff percolate out, and you got your stuff at the top, your light stuff like your kerosene and your propane, and then you get gasoline, you get heavier grades of gasoline, you get diesel, and then and then finally you get basically what you put in, which is crude, and then you get like plastics and stuff. So, refineries at their core are pretty simple things. However, it's not, actually getting a significant quantity of the stuff and having them run well, not so simple. Especially when a large majority of the people who knew anything about that are either dead, zombified, or currently working directly with the Navy, and if we ask for their help, we'll sort of get a cold shoulder, which happened loads of times. However, we had basically all of the manpower we could ever ask for. So, it came down to, okay, we can't figure out how to get, diesel again. We can't figure out how to do that off the top of our heads, and we're not going to get any help for it. We're not going to get any help on it. Okay, so what's our option? Okay, well, we've got to go back to coal. We can do that. Coal is easy. There's a lot of it. There isn't any EPA to tell us, how to and how not to mine coal. There isn't an OSHA either, but, it's not to say that we did things, with particular disregard for the environment or particular disregard for human safety, but it was, we don't have to be quite so rigid. And, I'm sure this may be a polarizing thought, but I'd like to meet in the middle here and make the statement that those organizations are important organizations. However, that does not mean they are incapable of stepping over the point where they are useful. Getting past the point is what I should be saying. They're not as an unending force for good as you would hope for from, that kind of organization. So anyways, we could do without a large amount of the rules and regulations, also just because desperate times call for desperate measures, etc. We mined a lot of coal. We made a lot of steel. Now, that was something we could do. There were steel mills around, and, just like every other major industrial site, including, 99% of the refineries, if not 100%, because we couldn't really get our hands on one at all, and, 99% of the steel mills were trashed because people, they either took, components, or they took supplies, or they just straight up, started wrecking the place for their own purposes. And, not to say they were being malicious with that, but the end result was we were out steel mills in a lot of cases, and, of course, refineries. So we had to, do a lot of rebuilding in that regard. It wasn't impossible, however. Refining oil is something that, the chemical engineers and petroleum engineers, etc., the people that were good with that kind of stuff, the Navy needed. They were in need. People that could make steel were also in need. However, they weren't as in need because the Navy at this point was not into building new ships. And they had their nuclear fleet, and that's sort of what they lived off of. And they were kind of busy chasing Russian subs, which is something I thought I can come back to. It's what they spent a lot of their time doing. So we were in charge of this. We managed to get our hands on steel mills. We managed to get those steel mills working and making steel. That's not to say we needed a hell of a lot of it. We didn't really need a hell of a lot of it. What we really needed was, we needed the occasional boiler casting. We needed stay bolts by the 100, if not by the 1,000. And we basically needed just every part you could have to restore a steam locomotive that's sitting on the sidelines to operation. We didn't do a lot of building our own, because frankly it was just deemed too resource intensive for what we'd get back. It was, okay, we've got these steam engines sitting here. What's the minimum time and effort that we can put into them to get them into operating capability and get them working for us? And for a lot of those, it was actually fairly simple. A lot of them were just down for mandatory inspections, etc., and without the FRA to tell us what to do, we didn't need to worry about them so much. We of course did our own inspections, but they weren't as rigid, and, frankly, they didn't take as long, because we had a lot more people going around, and we didn't have to worry about funding. We had all the supplies we needed for the most part. So this led into, and I kind of skipped a point between finding Weibold and actually getting this up and running, and I wasn't I going to lead into something? I forgot. Anyways, I skipped a point, but there was a very large period of time where we just invested everything we could into building steam engines, into restoring steam engines, rather. So we got everything that we possibly could out and running, and we got them all shifted around the country to where we could use them, and of course, we had a lot more switching power than we did road power, and that kind of was a problem. But that's why we needed the diesels in the end. But it was enough to make a hell of an impact. on, the normal day-to-day goings-on of the country. Because we could finally get in touch with people, because we could finally get stuff moving around. We didn't handle a lot of the military stuff, although we had to defend ourselves from time to time. We were exclusively an organization of making trains and planning trains, and fixing rails. And so, once we maxed out the steam power that we had in the United States, we had more than enough coal to go around. Once we maxed out the engines we had, we started looking elsewhere. We basically stole the Canucks engines. And by stole, I mean, there wasn't much left of the Canadian government. It just didn't happen. A lot of the governments pretty much fell apart, especially in a larger country. And the Canadian government kind of gave up because they had immense amounts of people running north. And so they gave up, and then over a period of time, they kind of faded into obscurity, and you were left with towns like the Toronto Rail Lance, which I covered very early in the storytelling thing. And they were more than happy to basically say, oh yeah, the steam engines are here, here, and here, make use of them. And the reason we could do that is because we were on good terms with these people, and because we served them just as well. It wasn't a US and Canada thing, it was a, we're all gonna die if we don't work together to get this better, and work for a better future. And I know that sounds very cliche, but that's just the way it was. You had your squabbles from time to time between people, and I can go on for ages about that between Donadio and the Quonsets versus the Islanders. And there was actually a very brief war that occurred, a ship-to-ship battle. But that's something I'll cover. That's something I can cover again later. And by the way, again, if you have something in one of these videos that you're interested in that you'd like me to elaborate on, I can easily make a video about it. All I need is a topic, and I will go. Even something unrelated that I haven't talked about. If you want to know, basically just leave me questions and I'll try to answer them. So, consider this an AMA, Survivor of the Zombie War. Anyways, we stole the Canucks engines. We also stole the Mexicans' engines. And they actually have quite a number of them. We stole the Cubans' engines, and that was difficult, but it happened. And it was difficult, it was difficult getting them back across from there to here. Cuba was kind of a wash. It very much went to military regime, and then that fell apart, and then that kind of fell to anarchy, and they tried to get some stuff back together, but there were so few people on that island. The amount of people that survived on the mainland was scarce, but at least they could get together. But Cuba, being the island it was, when they got hit hard, and they didn't really have a way to replenish their population. They got a wave of people that came in boats at the very beginning, during the Great Panic, and then the infection got to the island, and then a lot of people died. And then everything broke down. And already it was sort of becoming a military state, because the government was really trying to crack down on all those people coming in, because they were worried about the infection getting there, and it happened. I won't say they were justified in being a kind of ruthless regime, but up to you. Maybe they weren't justified, but it probably saved them for a little bit longer. All they did was buy time. Anyways, oh crap, train men out.